Tim Bennett here with John Nash, as promised. There was another article that John found. John, you were a plethora of articles this week.
I read way too much.
Way too much.
Way too much.
And this article had to do with online sites that may block older workers from entering their details. And so we had a guest of the show from the past, Bruce Hurwitz, who's an executive recruiter, job search strategist, career counselor, and business advisor. He also is the president of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing here in New York. And we thought he'd be the perfect person to have on to talk about this article and really about ageism in the workplace. And as John mentioned, he's very big and putting veterans to work and some people in the
as you can see,
workforce. Oh, there he is.
Bruce is quite well read as well. See all those books?
Hey, Bruce, welcome to the Focus Group.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you gentlemen again. It's
Yeah,
been a while.
Good to see you.
Nice to see. We're hoping you could come and meet us in studio, but
Well, I'm totally confused because I was expecting, based on John's email, YouTube, and you guys look like you're in a real TV studio.
we are.
We are, yeah. It's real. It's real.
Where are you? You're in your office.
I'm in my home office.
You're in your home office.
So Bruce told me a fun little story the other day that he was working with he's doing his service of working with one of his clients on getting their resume tuned up and LinkedIn and helping with their career. And the client was actually looking at all the books and figured out who he liked. Oh, you read this a story and you read that a story?
You're going to have to turn them around, I guess.
Yeah, the spines
Well,
go
the book is by David McCullough. It's Truman, which is right over. Yeah, it's hard. Right over here. It's
There
the
it is.
big
There it is up there.
blue one.
The big blue
And
one.
he recognized it, and we just got into a very nice conversation, and that closed the deal.
That's
because
great.
people work with and people hire people they like, and you like people with whom you share something in common.
That's what Tim always says. That like, who do you want to have a beer with?
Yeah,
Let's go out and have a beer. Who do you want to hang out with?
That's a great point. And one of the reasons we wanted to speak to you today, Bruce, is there seems to be a perception out there, right or wrong, and hopefully you can dispel it for us, is that employers have the perception of older workers, and I would say middle-aged workers of, you hear you're overqualified, you're too expensive, you're technologically lacking. You might be set in your ways, you're going to leave, maybe not motivated. And to that point, John had found this article about some of these online job sites that are now sort of indirectly, is it sifting people out or filing people out?
What they found
based
was
on age?
some sites, when you would enter your year of matriculation, it either didn't allow you to do it because it didn't go back far enough, which right away would be a ding, or it's a backdoor way of figuring out your age.
Right.
And they did some fake. They set up an experiment where they had a X amount of candidates apply for the same job. They were like made up candidates, and men of a certain age didn't fare 30% worse than their counterparts. Women had it harder than men on some of this situation here. So, Bruce, what is your perspective on that? Because you work with a lot of different people. Is it ever a concern of yours? Do people actually ask you right off the bat, like, is age going to be a problem?
Candidates, yes. Employers, no.
Really?
When an employer tells me they're looking for someone with 2 to 3 years experience, I know they are looking for someone who is not old. I mean, 2 to 3 years experience means you probably are 26, 27, if you need a bachelor's degree. But that's not necessarily the case. You can have somebody who is older, in their 50s. Maybe they worked for 30 years in one industry and then changed careers, and they only have 2 to 3 years experience. I've had that happen. I've submitted for an IT position. I had 2 candidates. One was in his mid-20s, one was probably in his mid-60s. The guy in his mid-60s got the second interview. He wasn't their first choice, but he got the job because he had the experience, he had the maturity that they didn't realize that they needed, because they compared the two of them, and the young guy just wasn't there yet.
So if someone didn't have the benefit of you representing them, for instance, as you representing them to the employer or the client, Do you recommend putting your graduation date on your resume? Or I was a recruiter a long time ago, and the one reason we always thought if you put your graduation date and your dates of employment, it was really a way of saying, yes, in fact, somebody did graduate, or they do have the education, or they in fact did work at the company. But is that now an old way of thinking?
You're comparing two different things, apples and oranges.
Okay.
Dates of employment you have to have on because no one wants to hire a jumper.
Right.
If you can't keep a job, it's just bottom line. Let's just say you guys are looking for a salesperson, and I send you somebody, and they've got, looks like a great resume. They worked at 10 different places, and these were all Fortune 50 companies, but they couldn't keep a job more than a few months. All right? You don't want that person. You want the guy who has a stable record of employment. So that's why dates are important. Now, for years of graduation, when I read this article, and John, thank you again. Well, first, thank you if I didn't say it for
Oh,
for
you
the
did, and it's
invitation
an
to
absolute
be on.
pleasure to have you.
But thanks for the article. When I read that business about asking for your high school graduation year, I had to reread it.
Yeah, I know, it's a
Who
surprise.
asks about high school?
Yeah.
All right? But going back, and that's legitimate, going back and saying you can only go back to 1956, that is blatant discrimination.
So Bruce,
But
oh, go ahead.
for your graduation from university, I have people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who just got their bachelor's degrees.
And could I jump off on that one? And I'm glad you brought that up. The example you gave a moment ago of a client you were working with, or you were working with an IT position that you had to fill, and the gentleman that got the second interview and eventually the job was in his mid-60s. Was that candidate, was that their third act or their second act? Was that a new career for them? And to extend that question a bit, do you see a lot of that happening with old workers who are maybe trying out a second or third career? And do you specialize in helping them to master the interview skills necessary to talk about that kind of a change?
I'll answer the last question first. Yes, I do provide career counseling services that are focused solely on interviewing. But this gentleman had been in IT since the start of IT. He had a 7-page resume, and there was nothing to cut. Now, he wasn't coming to me for career counseling. He was the candidate. And I'm looking at this thing, it's 7 pages. Can we cut something out? There wasn't anything. He had worked for IBM, for the Sun Systems, for Apple, on real projects, and he was proud of them, and my client was thrilled to read this 7-page document because it was all substantive.
Was he paid fairly, or she?
Oh, yeah, he.
Okay.
I always ask, what is the salary range? I won't do a search without a salary range. And I do it because I don't want to waste anybody's time. If somebody's looking for $100,000, that's what they need to survive, and my client's only offering 50, what are we doing this for?
Right.
Or vice versa. But I've never had a situation where somebody has said, I can pay her less, I can pay him less because of gender or age. Now, there are older workers who will use that as a marketing point. They will say, I don't need health insurance. I'm covered. I retired. I've worked with retired police officers. They say, listen, I've got my pension. I can't stand being idle. My wife is going to kill me. I've got to get out of the house. All right? One gentleman said to me, I've lived with my wife for 20 years. Weekdays, we spent about 4 hours together, conscious. Now that I'm not working, we've got to spend 8 hours with each other. We're going to kill each other. And then one of them was a police officer. He said, I've got a gun in the house. I'm scared. And it was just hysterical. They're looking for something to do, and they can come in and say, you can get me for less money.
That's interesting.
I was, I don't know if this is, I think it's pertinent to the age question. Is John and I have talked about this a lot, and I just had a conversation with a friend who's had a pretty robust career, and the industry that she's in is in kind of dire straits. And she feels at 58 years old that maybe she's not employable anymore. And I think is that what you see from some of the is a lot of what you do more counseling to tell people that they do have value and they do have worth, or or is it really true that maybe more people don't want to hire? Because that's what this article kind of says. The older you are, the less likely you are to get called back. Is that your experience?
No.
Okay. So there is hope, John.
My experience is that if you know how to interview well, you can make the young guy look bad. But you have to know how someone in their late 50s, early 60s should go into an interview. If you go in looking like the person's grandfather or grandmother, you're not getting the job. If you go in and you have confidence and you appear to be quote unquote youthful, you should do fine. But you also have to understand what the concerns of the interviewer are. I'm interviewing you for a job. I am going to be supervising you. You have more experience than I do. What's going to happen if my boss decides to fire me and to hire you because you'll cost him less than I do?
Oh, I never thought of that.
All right?
Never thought of that.
So what I tell people to do is to, at the appropriate time, to say one of the things I'm proud of, if it is true, never lie on an interview. If it is true, talk about the people you have mentored and say, I had younger colleagues. They've now gone on to bigger and better. I am very proud of that. That is an accomplishment that means a great deal to me. And if you think I'm just saying that, if and when the time comes and you want to check references, my references are going to be colleagues who I trained, who I mentored, and who are now in positions of authority, and they'll be able to tell you what you personally and professionally can expect from working with me.
Bruce, one of the things that has always struck me about you, and I've known Bruce for a couple of years now, is you're a supremely good listener. And I say that because I think you listen to your client. You have two sets of clients. You have the companies that are hiring you and working with you to help them fill their positions internally. And then, of course, you have candidates that are coming to you to have you help them find jobs. And listening is a key thing. So to pick up on the end of Tim's question, and it's something we obsess about a little bit, do you have what I call lost sheep clients, people who come to you and say, and they're legitimately, they might have been downsized unexpectedly, and are you the kind of guy that kind of listens to them, looks at their background, and then helps them craft the new them, the new resume, the new here's the skill set I think you should be selling and talking about? Because that seems like a heavy lift to me, but it seems like something you might be exceptionally good at.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, the whole thing?
No, I was just kidding.
That's Bruce.
That's me. That's what I thought you were going for, was the crazy sense of humor.
And John believed you.
John bought it.
Yeah, all the time. That's what they come to me for. And as a result, I started a new offering of career counseling and job search help. Because you want to start a new career. And the example that I like to give, and it's a true story, I read about it. It wasn't somebody who actually was a client of mine. This gentleman was tired of his job and had a great hobby. He would make birdhouses.
Love birdhouses.
And he would give these birdhouses to his friends for gifts. And they were beautiful. Some had them inside as works of art. Some put them outside. And they were functional. So he decided he wanted that to be his career. Didn't work. He would have to have charged hundreds of dollars for his birdhouses. He didn't think it through. So listening is the most important thing. When I meet with a candidate or a career counseling client, we talk about listening. Because, and I'm sure Tim can come up with his own examples, the one that I like is you go for a business development position at a real estate company, and they, of course, are telling you what their problem is, what they're looking for. And they spend 10 minutes talking about building up their commercial real estate division. And then they say, Tim, tell us about your business development experience. And you are more proud of your residential than your commercial. You start talking about residential,
Yep.
It's a complete disconnect. The interview's over.
Yeah.
You lost. But there is one thing that I would like to say. Thinking of age discrimination or any discrimination is what I call the justification of last resort. You didn't get the job, it's got to be because you are a... And it could very well be that you can't write, and therefore your cover letter was trash. You don't know how to market, so your resume is just a bunch of mishmash. Or you got the interview, which means your cover letter and resume were fine, but you don't know how to interview. Or there was a better candidate. I had one client who rejected everybody I sent, and they didn't hire anybody in the end. I don't know what they were doing. But I submitted about 10 people for an executive assistant search, which is the worst search, and everybody called up, they're discriminating against me. I said, no, they've rejected older, younger, every race, every religion. They just don't know what they're doing.
So that's Occam's razor. The simple,
whatever your unique status is, there could be a legitimate reason why you didn't get the job, and if you don't confront that, you're going to have troubles down the road.
That's a really good example, Bruce. And that was, and you actually just, it's Occam's razor. Sometimes the simplest explanation must in fact be the one that's true. So I think my takeaway from you has always been that, and I would urge people to check out Bruce's services. We have his information online. You are a wonderful optimist. I think your clients are probably very happy to work with you because you do see the silver lining in a lot of things. And I think your attitude on that last statement about the justification of last resort is pretty spot on because, you know, there are things out of our control, and accepting that and saying, well, you know, it might not have been a good fit and might not have been this, but owning the stuff that we can control, cover letters, skills, and particularly the interviewing one. I mean, that it's an art form in and of itself. And I've interviewed people, Tim's interviewed people, they've gone great, or sometimes you're literally pulling the answer out of the candidate. And who wants to pull an answer out of someone? You want to be like, you know, on your game. So Bruce, before we let you go, why don't you give our audience all the information about you and your services? Bruce also is the author of a book called Hook. Am I right? It's Hooked?
No, it's called The Hooker's Guide to Getting a Job.
Hooked.
It was written 2-3 years ago. The stories are still cute, and I don't think I would change any of them, but it's kind of outdated. A book usually has about a 2-year lifespan, except if you're writing Harry Potter, and I didn't do that.
So your website is hsstaffing.com, and is there any other URLs you want people to know?
Nope, that's it. You can go to the site, click on Career Counseling. You will see my different service packages. I think my prices are reasonable. I dealt 2 hours ago with a woman for 1 hour who needed a new resume. She thought this was going to take a week. We finished it in less than an hour.
Wow.
I cut through all of the hype. That's what I'm known for, in being brutally honest.
And there's also some great blogs and articles, information up there too. So it's a great site.
On the
Bruce's
library
site, yeah.
page. Thank you.
Well, Bruce, we're looking forward to having you back again, and we would love to have you in studio. And you're going to have a great time when you come in. Bruce is a wonderful guest. So again, it's Bruce Hurwitz has been our guest. He is really super cool guy. I urge you to check him out at his website, hsstaffing.com. And he is the executive recruiter and career counselor and he's owner of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing.